Velkommen til Filmz TV. I dagens program kigger vi nærmere på nogle af CPH PIX sidste arrangementer, og vi har talt med flere af de fremmødte kunstnere, den amerikanske independent instruktør Mike Ott, den græske producer af den Oscar-nominerede dogtooth Athina Tsangari, den amerikanske singer-songwriter Jim White, som gav koncert på Christiania, samt filmmusikkomponisten Michael Nyman, som ikke gjorde det nær så godt, da han optrådte på Den Sorte Diamant. Velkommen til.
Way down south I know a girl who is blind. She walks along a lonely highway each day.
Den 54-årige Jim White har haft et unikt liv. Han har været professionel surfer, taxichauffør, model, filmmager og ikke mindst musiker. På den musikalske scene har han gjort sig bemærket med sine smukke, stilfærdige sange, der bedst kan beskrives som alternativ countrymusik. White slog et smut forbi Christiania for at give koncert på Loppen, hvor han også fik vist sin filmskolefilm The Beautiful World. Vi fangede White umiddelbart inden arrangementet til en lille snak om hans karriere.
The movie that they're showing tonight, it's not the best movie. It's probably the best movie I could make, but it's not the best movie you'll ever see. But I learned a lot about it, life and art and craft making it. Same with the music. I'm not the best musician in the world, but I've learned a lot doing it, and hopefully I'll do it a couple more years and then I'll go do something else, like be a teacher maybe. Wouldn't mind being a writer, but you can't make any money doing that. You got to make a living. I got 2 kids, so I got to pay the bills. And the music, I wasn't trying to get a professional job as a musician. I just wrote songs as a hobby. And one day, David Byrne from the Talking Heads came and said, "Let's make a record." I wasn't really looking for it. So usually the things that take with me are things that I'm not really looking for. If I try to do something, I fail. If I don't try, I have some success. Like I tried to be a pro surfer, and I would always get about halfway through the contest. I was good enough to win a couple of heats, but I could never win the whole thing. Wasn't good enough. I worked in the film business for a while, doing sound design. Did sound design on Halloween 6, which was fun because I didn't really give a shit about the movie. It wasn't important, so I could do whatever I wanted to do.
But it's interesting that it's this movie in particular that's being shown here, because this movie came at a really important turning point in your life. It was after this movie that you went through a long, hard depression as well.
Sick physical sickness and mental illness. Yeah, the film nearly killed me. By the end of it, I was sick in body and mind and couldn't walk for a couple months, and was in bed. And just to pass the time, I started writing songs, laying on my back, staring at the ceiling, going, I hope I don't die. Well, part of me saying I hope I don't die, part of me saying I hope I do. I was in bad shape back then. Things are better now. Well, I remember I was on a panel at South by Southwest about being a songwriter. And there was, 100 people there. And this guy raised his hand and he said, he asked me the question, because I was the only real songwriter on there. There was other people in the music business. And he said, if it's like a really beautiful day and it's first day of spring and you got to write a song, how do you keep yourself inside? And I thought, well, I wouldn't even think about that. I'd just be writing a song. I wouldn't even be thinking about it. So that's what I told him. If you're thinking about it, you're probably not suited for the job. So I would tell filmmakers that if you're waiting for something to come to you, you probably don't have what it takes to be a filmmaker. To be a successful filmmaker, you've got to do it like you got to breathe air. Like if you can't make a film, it's the same thing as you being strangled. You got to have a desperate passion, because that's what the good filmmakers have. They have a desperate passion to tell one story or another. They're not thinking, let me advance my career. They're thinking, I have to tell this story. And if you're not thinking, I have to tell this story, then that's probably not a good business for you.
Mike Ott er et ungt amerikansk instruktørtalent, som for nylig vandt prisen for mest lovende navn til Independent Spirit Awards, det største awardshow for filmmagere, der laver film uden for Hollywoods studiesystem. Ott havde sine 3 iøjnefaldende film med på festivalen, Analog Days, Little Rock og Kid Icarus, og fælles for alle 3 værker er, at ungdommens usikkerheder ofte kommer på tale. Vi mødte Ott i København for at tale om hans film.
When I was in school, the best advice, like one of my teachers gave me, that said, the world is not conducive to making art. That always kind of stuck with me because I feel that it's not. And so if you really want to be a filmmaker and you really want to get your movie made, I mean, you got to do whatever it takes, which is a lot of times stealing, borrowing, you know, whatever. I didn't start making movies until I was like 22, 23. I was kind of lost and didn't know what I wanted to do, and it was like taking classes at this junior college and stumbled into a filmmaking course and kind of went from there. I mean, a lot of the things that I write about are things from real life experiences, writing people in that I know, and so I think part of it's just maybe I'm not a very good writer. I can't come up with any ideas, so I have to like think what's immediately in front of me. Yeah.
It seems to me when you look at some of those independent movie festivals, also like Sundance, it's becoming more and more mainstream as well. Is that beneficial for you guys doing independent movies, that there is more attention created around it, or does it make it more difficult because it becomes more mainstream?
I think it's hard. I think it's really hard because, you know, you look at Sundance or any of the really big festivals. I mean, people premiering their films there, like Sofia Coppola, and you know what I mean. So essentially, some young filmmaker, me, or even someone who's just starting out. I mean, when they're going to a festival like Sundance, they're having to try to make a film that's going to compete for a spot in this festival with Sofia Coppola or someone like that, or Martin Scorsese, or you know, I mean, how can you do that? It's impossible. So it makes it really tough, I think.
Græske Athina Tsangari producerede for nylig det Oscar-nominerede unikum Dogtooth, og nu er hun aktuel med sin helt egen film Attenborough, som hun har produceret, forfattet og instrueret. Det er en særpræget film om en ung kvinde, der opfører sig både dyrisk og barnagtigt, og ligesom Dogtooth handler Attenborough også om unge mennesker, der kan mærke seksualiteten spire. Ligesom Dogtooth er det en sær størrelse, fyldt med skæve eksistenser, og vi fik chattet med den karismatiske Tsangari om hendes lettere vanvittige værk.
I think there's lots of talk about sex and about whatever sexual liberation, but there is very little practice. You know, I feel like sexuality is something that's happening more remotely now. We're more sexual by sending a text or by going on Facebook or flirting online than being able to be sexual, like face to face.
You've talked about it, the movie being a kind of Western in some way. Can you talk a bit about more about that? What do you mean by that?
You know, I didn't set out to do a Western, but in everything I do, I work a lot with structure. And there is, you know, there is a purity and austerity in the form of the Western, which resembles the form of ancient Greek tragedy. So it helped me position my actors on the screen, basically. I auditioned lots of girls to find Marina, and in the end, I mean, I did not choose Ariane because she could not speak Greek. I am a masochist, but not maybe that much. No, it just happened. It just happened that in the end she was the one who... She has this like really tender aggression about her. You know, she's very aggressive, very tender, very soft and very savage at the same time. And these are amazing qualities for an actress. It was a bit of a problem that, you know, she had to learn phonetically basically all of her lines. But yeah, she did it very fast. She's very hardworking, and you know, this distance between the languages was also something that I mean, it was a bit of a coincidence because I was feeling like that in Greece, a bit as an exile in my own country. Like I couldn't quite understand, you know, the country where I come from. I was gone for a very long time. So it was interesting that in the end I casted an actress who did not speak the language. You know, it all makes sense in the end. You just have to go through it and not question stuff that seems right. And then in the end it all somehow makes sense.
And how are the conditions actually in the Greek film industry now that the economy is so hurt?
I mean, it's been quite grim. You know, for example, the last year there hasn't been any money for films funded by the state. The Greek Film Center has been in hiatus. But now there is a restructuring of the Greek Film Center, and there is a new board of directors, and there is a new law for cinema that was recently voted. So, and actually, one of the members of our new board is a Dane.
Really?
Yeah, so he came to Greece to put some order in our chaos.
En af festivalens mest ventede begivenheder var koncerten med Michael Nyman, den prisbelønnede komponist bag sensationelle scores til film som The Piano, Gattaca og et væld af Peter Greenaways unikke perler. Men A Night with Michael Nyman var snarere et nightmare. Først og fremmest havde Nyman svært ved at ramme tangenterne ordentligt, da han selv skulle spille nogle af sine største hits. Og dernæst fik vi set et par af Nymans egne film, som bedst kan beskrives som skrabede amatørvideoer, hvor ensformig musik og meningsløse billeder sammenvæves i en trist blanding, der fik 2/3 af publikum til at udvandre fra Den Sorte Diamant, før arrangementet var overstået. Under en samtale med Politikens Michael Bo på scenen, forsøgte Michael Nyman dog at bilde sig ind, at hans film var spækket med smukke metaforer, hvilket han pointerede blot få sekunder efter at have indrømmet, at han havde filmet mere eller mindre tilfældigt, og dernæst havde fundet et helt vilkårligt musiknummer til filmen på sin egen iTunes-spilleliste. En talentfuld dansk strygerkvartet opførte et af Nymans andre værker, men igen var sammenhængen mellem musikken og billederne fuldstændig fraværende. Men i pausen og før publikums masseudvandring fanger vi Nyman selv til en lille personlig chat.
Being a kind of disciple of John Cage, I suppose I love finding ways of removing myself from what he called taste, memory and desire. Now he kind of removed his taste, memory and desire by using chance procedures, the I Ching or whatever. And in a way, writing music for someone else's artwork, if it is an artwork, someone else's film, with someone else's structures and with someone else's kind of creative decisions, is a kind of way of separating me from my normal thought processes and simultaneously pushing myself into other areas. So you could say that the ultimate sort of randomizing process was the requirements of the soundtrack for the piano, because it was that film set in that period with it expressing those kind of emotions. I had to find a way of sort of ceasing to be, Michael Nyman, the kind of sort of slightly mechanistic composer whose music always had some sort of emotional content, but it was expressed mechanically, and to sort of put myself into a totally different psychological and emotional and cinematic and therefore musical and structural situation. So it was a kind of randomizing process that enabled me to kind of jump out of my own skin and inhabit someone else's skin, or I invented the someone else. So there are things that start with the director being aware of what I do, and then encouraging me to go in different directions. And of course, in terms of the purpose of the music and the structure of the music, I'm forced to do things that wouldn't necessarily come naturally to me. And I like that idea of having this kind of external discipline to kind of force me to think differently.
Looking at your resume, it's been a while since you've delved into that world of Hollywood.
Yeah.
And
well, no, not Hollywood. I mean, I've not written I don't think I've written a kind of feature film soundtrack for 5 years, maybe 6.
But is that due to the disillusionment of all those experiences with Practical Magic, The Hours?
No, nothing to do with me. It's just no one makes me in the office, or the office that they do make are films that don't really interest me, either from the subject matter point of view or the kind of culture that these films represent, or they don't suggest anything to me musically. But generally, I seem to have been erased from the current list of soundtrack composers, which is kind of really bizarre, because the strange paradox between the less music I write for film, the more people are interested in my career. So I get more prizes and I get more kind of honorary doctorates for being the great film composer, the less soundtracks I write. So it's kind of easy. I'll never write another soundtrack. I'll become kind of exceedingly famous. There'll be a kind of Michael Nyman. If I carry on writing music, there won't be a Michael Nyman museum. But if I don't write any more soundtracks, then they will. Whenever I fly to Mexico and back, I use that as an opportunity to kind of catch up on the films that I've missed. And obviously, when I watch a film, I'm very interested in the current state of the soundtrack. And I find, I can sort of understand why I'm no longer employed as a soundtrack composer, because apart from Phil, I think most soundtracks are very cautious. They sound as though they've been written by committee. It's very difficult to hear the composer's voice. And then the other thing with soundtracks, it's not only a question of the musical language and the vocabulary, but also a question of scale. And I saw Black Swan on a plane, and I thought the soundtrack was kind of so over the top and so out of scale with what the film was trying to do, but then maybe the film was also out of scale with itself.
Nyman blev også slået helt ud af den til sidst, da folk begyndte at udvandre fra hans film, mens interviewet stod på. Og det var det selvfølgelig også en smule synd for Nyman, men ærligt talt kom det slet ikke bag på os.
Okay, I'm going to go and see my film.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Det var alt for denne gang på Filmz TV. Copenhagen PIX Filmfestivalen er desværre overstået, men heldigvis er der langt flere film at glæde sig til i årets løb. Husk, at du kan se listen over alle de film, som vandt festivalens priser på Copenhagen PIX hjemmeside www.cphpix.dk. Flimmerkassen har også meget spændende nyt at byde på. Det er blandt HBO's seneste satsning, fantasy-serien Game of Thrones. Og på fredag har vi et eksklusivt interview med Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, som har en af hovedrollerne i serien. Og vi slog også et smut forbi seriens gallapremiere på Nationalmuseet, hvor vi blandt andet mødte Julie Ølgaard og Lone Scherfig. Husk desuden, at serien har premiere onsdag den 4. maj på Kanal Plus Series og Kanal Plus HD. På gensyn. Husk, at du let kan finde alle vores Filmz TV-udsendelser på hjemmesiden under Filmz TV-fanebladet. De ligger også i high definition på video.dk, hvor du også kan finde flere udsendelser af Railgun TV, vores web-tv-program om spilverden. Du kan også læse flere anmeldelser og artikler på Filmz, som du kan diskutere i vores omfattende forum.